For months now, I've been reporting on EE's very much anticipated 800 MHz switch on, including the various different ways in which they were testing it and sort of trialing it, and the various different approaches that I sort of saw it in the wild with my devices. And also I said about how to recognise it based on sort of antennas and cable tags. However, the tech journalist Jonathan Morris, who does quite a lot of sort of who covers quite a lot of network stuff, has managed to find out that he is going to be switching on the 800 MHz 4G service sometime next week. Now, I personally think it will be sometime early in the week, because that seems to be when EE tends to sort of release new things. And also, I don't know, I can't really see it happening sort of late in the week, say Friday, because there's the weekend and you just generally don't want to sort of release new things just before the weekend on a Friday, really. From closely monitoring EE's 800 MHz deployment and sort of how it's in use in the wild, it has been possible to actually sort of work out that it would be sort of very imminent around this time at the moment, because I've seen in my local area mass broadcast EE 800 MHz for all devices that can attach, and then those masts sort of appearing so I can no longer connect to them, and there's some other masts appearing on 800 MHz and then once again sort of going into hiding again. And it's now got to a point where I can't, with any of my devices, connect to any EE 800 MHz in my area. However, if I use, say, a phone with a Vodafone SIM in it, for example, and do a network search with the phone locked to 800 MHz, the phone does come up with EE as a network broadcasting 800 MHz, and if I then select to connect to that network, the phone will sit on EE's 800 MHz 4G for a short enough time, for enough time that Network Signal Guru can bring up sort of a list of cells and a bit of information. And from what I can see, there are a lot of masts in this area that are broadcasting EE 800 MHz, and they do actually seem to be broadcasting it at a reasonably high power, which is sort of, again, what you would expect, because before, when the 800 MHz was available to all 4G devices, they would have to keep it within the 2G and 3G footprint so that calls would work, because obviously without VoLTE you can't call on 4G. However, from next week, when they enable the 800 MHz fully, only VoLTE capable devices will be allowed on it, which means that they can sort of ramp the coverage from the 800 MHz masts right the way up, in order that they can therefore have a very much larger 4G footprint through the 800 MHz than they would do previously. And furthermore, because of 800 MHz greater penetration ability and greater sort of coverage footprint, it will also improve EE's general sort of nationwide coverage. And according to John Morris's webpage on this, a geographical boost in coverage by around about 2% is to be expected. Now, 2% might sound small, but it's actually absolutely huge in terms of the amount of added coverage that actually sort of adds to EE, especially when you consider that EE's coverage footprint at the moment is already very, very good. So now that we've heard all this, I guess the big question from a viewer would be, how can I get it? Well, you need to have a device which is VoLTE capable on EE's network, which is all of the iPhones from the iPhone 6 and above with the latest carrier update, no matter where it is bought from, support EE VoLTE and will therefore be able to connect to the 800 MHz. There are also some Android and Windows Phone devices that are supported for EE VoLTE, although particularly in the Android department, quite a lot of them have to be running EE firmware in order to be able to use EE VoLTE, although there are some exceptions in terms of modern flagships in that area. Now, obviously, in order to connect the 800 MHz, it needs to be in your area, and certainly from what I've seen, there are 800 MHz masts all over the country, so that shouldn't really be a problem. There should be 800 MHz footprint pretty much everywhere. And finally, they're based on the sort of network's priority system. EE have got 5 megahertz on the 800 megahertz band compared to currently 20 deployed for 1800 megahertz 4G, and then 35 megahertz in many areas now for 2600 megahertz 4G. So clearly they don't have that much capacity on 800, and therefore you won't just end up on 800 like all the time. You'll only end up on it when it will sort of provide a benefit to the sort of 4G continuity. So if your 1800 megahertz 4G gets sort of too weak to be good, you become very sellage, then you should land on the 800 megahertz 4G. I live in a rural area ordinarily, and my house is pretty much a Faraday cage. So I am looking forward to the 800 megahertz enablement quite a lot, and I know lots of other people are also incredibly interested in it. So I'm sure there'll be a sort of a lot of excitement around next week. So let me know sort of how it ends up panning out for you, and thanks for watching.